Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir tout le monde. My name is David Neufeld, and I'm proud to serve as your USJE National President. I want to begin by recognizing that while USJE is convening this town hall virtually, we are meeting on Indigenous land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples for thousands of years. I'm joining you from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, the territory where USJE's national office is located. Please note that simultaneous interpretation is available, and in order to access that service, click on the interpretation button. I want to thank you for joining us tonight for tonight's hall and for taking the time to be here. You are taking precious time out of your busy schedule to learn more about the federal government's cuts to public services and how your union is advocating on your behalf. We also wish to better equip you and coworkers during these very trying times. At the end of the session, you will have the opportunity to provide your questions and comments during our question and answer session. I am joined this evening by my esteemed Director of Labor Relations, Melanie Crescenzi, as well as PSAC expert on workforce adjustment, Darren Paccioni. Thank you to my Director of Communications, Sebastian Bezot, who will be acting as our host for the question and answer session. The reality is that we are holding this town hall at a time of considerable stress and turmoil for so many of our members. As public safety personnel and USJE members, I know you work very hard, day in and day out, to keep Canadians safe. Over the years, I, alongside USJE's regional vice presidents, have had the privilege to meet so many of you from coast to coast to coast. Le SESJ reconnaît votre dévouement, votre engagement et l'expertise qui vous apportez aux 17 ministères et organismes au sein desquels vous travaillez en tant que membre du SESJ. Nous savons qu'une grande partie de votre travail s'effectue dans l'ombre de la première ligne, mais qu'il est absolument essentiel à l'infrastructure de la sécurité publique du Canada. Bon nombre de membres du SESJ constituent le pin dorsal opérationnel de cette infrastructure. Sans vous, les ministères et organismes pour lesquels vous travaillez ne pourraient pas fonctionner ni avancer. Through representation at countless national and regional labor management meetings, USJE has advocated for better working conditions, reduced workloads, improved access to psychological supports, the retention of the RCMP in municipalities, provinces, and territories where it is currently under attack, and so many other issues. USJE also has a strong track record of engaging elected officials at all levels of government. On April 15th, we celebrated 7 outstanding USJE members for their contributions to public safety. Congratulations to Mike Ashman, Chantal Blier, Francine Cadieux, Hadam Mohamed Hamid, Christy McDougall, Michelle Martin, and Nicholas Tilner. Nous avons organisé de nombreux événements sur la colline parlementaire au cours des dernières années afin de souligner l'importance des contributions essentielles du personnel fédéral de la sécurité publique. On a aussi souligné la nécessité de soutenir les membres du SESJ dans ce travail. Tout récemment, le ministère fédéral de la sécurité publique, Gary Ananda Sandagri, s'est joint à nous pour les prix annuels nationaux de la sécurité publique du SESJ. Célébrons 7 membres exceptionnels du SESJ pour leur contribution à la sécurité publique. Over the past few months, USJE's budget cuts campaign has become a top priority for our union. This campaign is focused on supporting our members impacted by the cuts forced by the Comprehensive Expenditure Review process and workforce adjustment. When the National Executive voted to adopt this campaign, we had the following campaign objectives in mind. 1, Create a campaign that fights to protect members' jobs, workplace conditions, and public safety. 2, ensure that campaign includes sustained political action and puts pressure on the government to, wherever possible, reconsider, reverse decisions taken that have an impact on public safety and our membership. Thirdly, implement a campaign that promotes member mobilization across the country and encourages members to stand up against the cuts. And fourthly, provide support and education to our frontline members who are impacted by the cuts and workforce adjustment. I'm proud to report that we are delivering on those 4 campaign goals. I invite you to visit our campaign website, safetyinjeopardy.ca. Pour accéder à notre site web de campagne, je vous invite à visiter sécuritéendanger.ca. If you receive our monthly newsletter and follow us on social media, you would have noticed that we recently organized a national mobilization event on March the 26th. The next event is scheduled for May the 28th. I would encourage you to contact your USJE Regional Vice President to get involved. To support our goal of education, USJE has published 2 bilingual podcasts dedicated to the subject of workforce adjustment. In addition, at USJE's 5 regional conferences in the fall of 2025, participants received WFA training so that they could understand how WFA works and how members can be supported through this WFA process. The training was delivered by 2 WFA subject matter experts from the PSAC, Aaron Siret and Darren Pachone. Thank you, Darren, for being able to be with us this evening. De plus, depuis janvier 2026, le SESJ participe activement à des discussions avec 7 des 17 ministères fédéraux qu'elle représente, lesquels ont décidé de mettre en œuvre des mesures pour réaménager les effectifs afin d'atteindre leurs objectifs de réduction des dépenses opérationnelles dans le cadre de l'examen complet des dépenses. Les discussions ont varié d'un ministère à l'autre, mais il est clair que l'information transmise a été extrêmement lente à nous parvenir et qu'il y manquait beaucoup de détails. At this stage, USJE is pressing for greater transparency around the cuts. Specifically, USJE has been requesting that departments provide the true cost of these reductions. This includes the number of vacant positions being used to account for a portion of the operational savings and the number of positions being outright eliminated through the WFA process. USJE has also been questioning each department on how they intend to introduce or utilize artificial intelligence in the workplace, both now and into the future, as this is something that was woven throughout the federal government budget in November of 2025 as a means to gain efficiencies. From our view, it has been quite concerning to see how poorly equipped some of the departments have been in navigating the WFA process. Some senior departmental leaders have been scrambling to understand and implement the provisions under our WFA in our collective agreements. This includes identifying what a work unit may look like and how decisions are taken on sending out affected notices to members. Je tiens à souligner que la directrice chevronnée de relations de travail de SESJ, Melanie Crescenzi, a participé à tous les comités pour réaménager les effectifs qui touchent les membres du SESJ. Je souhaite la remercier d'avoir entrepris ce travail très important. I will now turn it over to Melanie to go over in depth about the information that has been provided to USJE to date. Melanie?
Bonsoir tout le monde. Alors que David vous a expliqué l'approche globale adoptée par le SESJ dans le cadre de notre campagne contre les coupes budgétaires, mon objectif pour vous aujourd'hui, c'est de fournir des informations plus spécifiques à chaque ministère concernant la situation actuelle sur les mesures de réaménagement des effectifs. Donc, bien qu'on va s'efforcer d'être aussi précis que possible, Nous ne pouvons pas aborder ici les données spécifiques à chaque groupe ou catégorie. Mon objectif, donc, est de vous donner un aperçu général de la situation par ministère. Et bien que je sois conscient qu'il s'agit d'une réunion spécifique à tous les départements ou parmi vous, vous êtes de départements différents, afin de vous donner une bonne compréhension des répercussions réelles du réaménagement des effectifs sur l'ensemble de notre organisation, je vais vous présenter les chiffres et la situation pour tous les ministères concernés. Bon, bien que des mesures de réaménagement des effectifs aient eu lieu au cours des dernières années, elles étaient peu fréquentes et concernaient souvent seulement un ou deux membres. Elles résultaient généralement d'une restructuration et dans de nombreux cas n'entraînaient aucune perte d'emploi. La mesure de réaménagement des effectifs à laquelle nous assistons actuellement est manifestement très différente, en ce sens qu'elle vise de nombre massif de personnes dans la fonction publique et touche presque tous les ministères relevant de l'administration publique centrale et au-delà. To give you a bit of background, USJE first started to see the lead-ups to workforce adjustment exercises arise under the Refocusing Government Spending Initiative back in 2024 and early 2025. At that time, you likely noticed many departments began implementing stop-the-clock measures to freeze the transition of term employees to indeterminate employees. And then many departments also implemented temporary staffing restrictions to control departmental workforce growth and with the hopes of minimizing the impacts on indeterminate employees. June 2025 is when USJE saw its first big WFA exercise, which was with the Department of Justice, where they affected 61 of our members. Since then, each time a department implements a WFA exercise, a national joint WFA committee is struck between department executives and bargaining agent representatives. As David noted, I, along with either the national president or different regional vice presidents, have sat and continue to sit on each of those WFA committees. The purpose of the committees is for the departments to provide regular updates on their WFA exercise, track the movements, and for the bargaining agents to raise any national procedural concerns that we're having or hearing from our members. So the next little bit is going to be a lot of numbers. I will try to go slowly. I will go by department to give you an update on the current status of each exercise. Our first one is ATSSC, the Administrative Tribunal Support Service of Canada. They have had 2 waves of WFA exercises. Their first affected 18 of our members, and their second was 25 of our members with a target of 19. The current status, for wave 1 of the 18 that were affected, 8 members either resigned, deployed, or were appointed. 4 members are opting, and 6 notices were rescinded. For wave 2, which is currently in progress, of the 25 affected in wave 2, 6 members have had their affected status rescinded, 9 members are in the opting stage, and 10 files remain to be actioned. So as I noted, we have WFA committee meetings with each of these departments. So for ATSSC, we meet with the department on a monthly basis to get updates. The next department is CAS, Court Administration Service. We have 6 affected members. 4 of those files have been resolved. 2 are pending, but follow-ups are being made, and we are told progress is coming on those 2 files. For CAS, because there's been no further WFA exercises, our meetings with them are on an ad hoc basis if needed. Correctional Services of Canada, as some of you may know, they launched their WFA exercise in January of 2026. At the time, they sent out 611 of total affected notices. That encompasses all bargaining agents and non-represented employees as well, with a global reduction target of 282. So of the 611 affected employees, 386 of those are USJE members. And of the 282 reduction target, 182 are positions represented by USJE. Correctional Service has already advised us that they expect there to be a wave 2 and a wave 3. Wave 2 was supposed to be implemented or commence on April 1st, 2026, but with the arrival of the new commissioner, they have paused the exercise in order to brief the new commissioner. In terms of status update for Wave 1, the Voluntary Departure Program, so VDP, just closed across all the departments. Some WFA exercises will be canceled since the VDP and the ERI, which is the Early Retirement Incentive, yielded the target reductions that they needed. So members who applied for VDP should start getting responses this week. And the hope is that the department starts rescinding letters for those areas where WFA is no longer needed sometime during the week of May 11th. In those units where reduction targets remain, CSC is preparing to launch what we know as the SURLO process, which is the selection of employees for retention or layoff, and or issue opting letters depending on what their targets are. So that analysis is ongoing, but we're told that the SURLO processes, where applicable, will be launched as early as the week of May 18th. For CSC specifically, we meet with them on a bi-weekly basis. So by we, USJE and all other bargaining agents that have members who are affected. In addition to that, because there are so many different components to the CSC department, we regularly schedule ad hoc meetings with sector heads to discuss group-specific concerns. Our next department is Justice. As I noted, Justice was the first to implement a WFA exercise amongst our departments. Wave 1 had 61 affected members. Wave 2 had 60 affected members. For Wave 1, 15 guaranteed reasonable job offers were issued. 15 members were either deployed or appointed. 2 are in the opting period. 5 selected a VDP option, and 24 affected statuses were rescinded. Wave 2 is currently in progress. The department has already told us that they've exhausted any GRJO options, so guaranteed reasonable job offer options, in Wave 1, so do not expect to have any guaranteed reasonable job offers for Wave 2. Our meetings with Justice occur on a monthly basis. We also have Parole Board of Canada. They affected this year 43 of our members with a target reduction of 38. We have no information yet to suggest that there will be a Wave 2. 22 of those 43 affected were case and subject records clerk positions. So the voluntary departure program for those positions ended on April 10th, and 4 employees chose to participate in the voluntary departure. So through this process and other staffing actions that the PBC undertook, the department was able to rescind the affected status of all the record clerks positions, with the exception of those in the prairies. For the prairies region, 2 SURLO processes are being initiated for the remaining 7 clerk positions. One is in Edmonton and one is in Saskatoon. The department is expected to retain 5 of those candidates, and these processes are expected to take approximately 2 weeks to complete. And then of the remaining 21 affected employees, 12 are in an opting period until July 15th, 2026. 3 of those have submitted opting forms, and 1 has since been appointed to another position within the PBC. 4 others are on leave without pay with return dates unknown, and 4 have or are looking to deploy, which would then conclude the associated WFA processes. We meet monthly as well with the Parole Board of Canada on these matters. PPSC was the latest department who sent out 12 affected notices on April 16, 2026, with a 100% reduction target, meaning that all 12 positions will be abolished. We've been told that barring any changes announced by the government, the department does not envision any other WFA exercises. So 6 of those 12 are currently going through the 30-day VDP process. The other 6 received opting letters and are currently in their 120-day opting period. Since PPSC just launched their WFA exercise, a request has been made to strike a committee, and we have our first meeting on Monday, May 11th. Public safety was a large department for us as well. They have issued 672 total affected employees. That's across the board, not just USJE, with a global reduction target of 375. So of those 672 that are affected, 408 are PSAC members, and approximately 389 of those 408 are actual USJE members. Public safety does have other components, PSAC components under their membership as well. And then of the 375 reduction target, 220 are positions represented by PSAC, the majority being USJE members. No information yet on whether there will be a wave 2. And in terms of status update, the department has completed the VDP processes and opting periods are underway. They're also getting ready to launch SURLO processes where applicable. As of the end of April, of the 408 PSAC affected members, we are told that 101 files have been resolved, either through departure, deployment, reasonable job offer, etc. Public safety meets with the bargaining agents on a monthly basis. The last one we have is the RCMP. Their wave 1 was launched at the end of February. 265 notices of affected status went out to all. 57 of those affected were indeterminate USJE members, 3 of which are civilian members. The majority are all within the NCR region. There is no wave 2 at this time, but originally the indications were that there may be a future need for more reductions. We have no further information on if that is still applicable and if that is still the case. So of the 265 notices, 4 statuses have been rescinded and 3 employees have deployed. RCMP is currently doing its guaranteed reasonable job offer analysis in hopes of reducing those affected statuses even further. Thereafter, if need be, we'll be going into the VDP and likely a SURLO process. They're expected to move to next steps after their analysis by end of May or beginning of June. Originally, we met with RCMP on a monthly basis at first, and now we meet with them on a biweekly basis as we're moving through the process. So those are the departments that we have received notices of WFA. There is one other department, Canadian Human Rights Commission. There has been no other WFA exercise or no initial WFA exercise. However, on March 26th, there was an announcement by the Director General and CFO indicating that a need to reduce the workforce may arise, and as such, WFA is not off the table for this department. So to summarize, of the total affected USJE members since June 2025, we currently sit at approximately 1,057 members who have been affected. And while we know that many of those will be resolved without job loss, we also recognize it's incredibly difficult and stressful for all affected. So we are diligently monitoring the situation for each individual case. In addition to meetings with departments on the various WFA exercises, I, along with USJE's Labor Relations team, are part of the PSAC's component-wide WFA Working Group Committee that's chaired by Darren, who's on this call as well. Through that group, components share progress on WFA exercises or issues that they are seeing in their respective departments. We also meet regularly to discuss any developments that PSAC can share from its meetings with the Treasury Board and to discuss what each component is seeing or hearing around either budget cuts in general and WFA exercises specifically for their departments. Finally, there's the issue of the government's early retirement incentive, which has been marketed, let's say, as being a process outside of the WFA exercise. And so while this is true, it may nonetheless impact WFA and address some reduction target numbers. Many of our departments have indicated that they are currently in the process of beginning to review and consider ERI applications. We're advised that while all are applying the criteria that was established by the Treasury Board, special and express consideration is being given to those who are affected and who have expressed an interest in ERI. So that's my update for where we are with the various departments. Obviously, while I can't speak in this forum to any specific cases, we're happy to answer any more general or broader questions that you may have. Just before we jump into that, members are reminded that your local and or RVP is your first point of contact for any individual questions relating to WFA.
As you can see, USJE has been very busy over the past several months as we've worked to get as much information as possible from departments and agencies. We've also sought to equip USJE representatives at every level, including regional vice presidents, with the information and tools to fight these cuts and best represent our members. There's also been some strong media interest over the last little while on cuts being made within the public safety realm. Consequently, we have leveraged several opportunities to highlight the invaluable role of USJE's members in keeping Canadians safe. This includes briefings to the Minister's office when and where possible, briefings to the Commissioner of the Correctional Service of Canada, and comments to the media. We have spoken out regarding affected notices and cuts to USJE members supporting legal teams within the Ministry of Justice, significant cuts to positions performed by USJE members at the Government Operations Center and Public Safety, plans to reduce the number of correctional program officers and correctional educators, plans to entirely eliminate the Community Employment Coordinator position within the Correctional Service, and impacts of WFA cuts to other non-USJE positions on USJE's members' workloads moving forward, such as librarians within CSC. On a positive note, I must take a moment to recognize that after years of advocacy by USJE, the Correctional Service of Canada moved to strengthen the resources in the area of sentence management. En conclusion, je peux dire avec une confiance absolue que moi-même et chacun des vice-présidents régionaux de SESJ, présents ici ce soir, sommes absolument déterminés à défendre chaque emploi de SESJ et à protéger le rôle des membres de SESJ dans les 17 ministères et organismes où ils et elles travaillent, étant donné que leur contribution à la sécurité des Canadiens est inestimable. I look forward to your questions and comments this evening. I'm going to now send it over to Sébastien.
Thank you, David. So we did receive quite a few questions. Now, this evening's town hall's topic is specifically on WFA and budget cuts. I do appreciate the other questions we've received, but those fall for grievances or bargaining or return to office, I would respectfully ask that you reach out to your local executive or your USJE regional vice president. USJE is one of the only unions that has full-time elected regional vice presidents, so feel free to reach out to them. Now, we can't answer specific individual cases, but we will answer questions that pertain to general membership. Serlo, what does Serlo mean? Darren, I think you're the one that volunteered to answer this question. Serlo, what does it mean?
There we go. I'm off mute now. Great. Thanks, Seb. So the Serlo, it's an acronym. So let's take a step back from that. This means it's the selection of employees for retention or layoff. It's a very stressful part of the process, but I will take one more little step back from that definition to sort of situate it relative to the whole experience. So say you're working at CSC, for example, and you receive an affected notice. Now, that affected notice, there's no mention in the affected notice that you're going to receive a reasonable job offer or that you may receive a guarantee of a reasonable job offer. These are some of the options that the department may extend to you in that instance. And the employer sets a job reduction target to which they are seeking to reduce the size of the work unit in the department. So there's voluntary departure programs. You may have heard of this concept where people volunteer to leave, and they have access to some of the options outlined in the Workforce Adjustment Appendix. And if there are more positions that need to be reduced than volunteers who leave the public service through some of the options, a selection of employees for retention or layoff process may be run to determine who will be retained and who will not be retained. So some of the details of that process, it's an awful process, very stressful process. During the deficit reduction action plan, the Harper era, folks talked about it as competing for one's own job. It is mentioned in the collective agreement once as an acronym. and it sits outside, and it's a staffing process. It sits outside the contract as a staffing process governed by the Public Service Commission. There's loads of managerial discretion. Manager sets the essential qualifications, which include language requirements. They set asset qualifications. Managers can also have the discretion to consider future or current and future operational requirements or organizational needs as part of the evaluation and assessment. So members must be informed of the assessment method. They must be informed that they have access to accommodations through that assessment process, and they must be informed of the outcome. The process creates tons of undue stress, is ripe for managerial bias. It lacks transparency. I don't have anything good to say about it, to be honest. It is a process that we must monitor vigilantly, and I know that USJE, as well as all the other component unions, everybody is working to monitor this process vigilantly. It happens after the voluntary departure program, so there's a fundamental sequence to that, and if you are not retained through a SURLO process, you then your WFA status changes. You become an opting employee, and options become available to you in that instance. We have because this is such a bad process, the union has sought to both bring it into the collective agreement and, rather than managerial discretion, govern the process, have seniority and employment equity sort of govern the process within the contract. Of course, if you want, then if it was in the contract, it would be grievable as well. Currently, any recourse in a SURLO process is an abuse of authority claim under the Public Service Employment Act, and the threshold for abuse of authority or a staffing complaint is abuse of authority. So the recourse is a staffing complaint, and the threshold for a staffing complaint is abuse of authority. So it's which is a high threshold to meet. So and of course, PSSC has written over the years to the Public Service Commission, voicing its concern and its challenge to this. But yeah, that's the background of what SURLO is and where it sits in the WFA process.
Thank you, Darren. One piece of advice: I know you're not happy with this process and you get very passionate about it. Try not to move a lot, because then your internet slows down. But I know how passionate you are about this topic. Now, since your mic, you were already there, I'm going to ask you one more question, then I'll go to Mel. But before I put that question, you gave a lot of information in that answer. Do you have a checklist or something that members can look at? Because that was a lot.
Yes, I will into the chat. I've set it up. I think I can add it to everybody.
I'll show it on the screen where everyone can get it. And in the meantime, I'll ask you the other question. You know, we had a question about, so I'm on the PSCC website. You go into the workforce adjustment. Then you select your employer. It's Treasury Board. Even if you're employed with the RCMP, you go through Treasury Board, and then you will have a lot of resources: the member guide, the alternation platform, an FAQ, and an affected checklist. So if you received an affected notice, there's an extensive checklist there to assist you. So a lot of the information that Darren will be sharing and has been sharing this evening is available on PSCC and USJE's website. Now, Darren, your question before I move on to Mel. You know, WFA is related to bargaining, and like the question we receive about bargaining, but we can't get into that too much because we don't have a bargaining team member on the call. But you, as being one of the WFA experts, what can you talk about bargaining and WFA?
Yeah, thanks, Seb. I'll keep still this time. So really importantly with bargaining, I was at the National Bargaining Conference in Montreal in February of 2015 or 2025. And at the National Bargaining Conference, delegates from coast to coast to coast came and spoke, and they spoke about a range of issues, but they spoke about job security. And at that bargaining conference, I was in each of the rooms for each of the major tables: the PA group, the SV group, the EB group, the TC group, when they were talking about job security. and listen to how they talked about what was coming, that people could see coming, potential job cuts. Remember, because this is early 2025. So when the teams put forward a position, and my colleague Aaron and I supported the bargaining teams establishing the workforce adjustment position, we sought to improve it. We sought to take away manager discretion from the job protection appendix, the workforce adjustment appendix. We sought to prevent contracting out. We sought to increase the monetary benefits. We sought to improve the processes in an effort to maximize employment for indeterminate employees and minimize involuntary layoff. The employer came to the table in October 2025 with a proposal that said, let's remove the workforce adjustment from the appendix. And instead of a workforce adjustment in your collective agreement, they said, we'll use the National Joint Council Workforce Adjustment Directive. You can't bargain it with the employer. And get the input process is very different, and it removes the ability for members on this call to vote to participate in a ratification vote on that proposal. So it takes that right away from folks. That's what the employer's proposal looked like. So that's where we're at right now with those proposals, with the employer's proposal, and we know now much more so than last year, job security is front and center, a front and center concern. So that's that sort of intersection between bargaining and workforce adjustment right now. The employer's position is not is one that it's a concession. It takes rights away from the members on this call.
Perfect. Thank you for touching that. And the last thing I will say to close this bargaining loop is that if you can invite a bargaining team member to your event. That's how you can get the most up-to-date bargaining update. You can ask all the questions. If you have any questions, there's the email that should be showing on the screen now. So you can do that to assist your members and your local. Now, Melanie, thank you for your patience. We have a civilian member of the RCMP who has the question, and he wanted to know if the alternation applies to them, that alternation process. Does it apply to RCMP civilian members that we proudly represent?
So, I mean, there's a few layers to that question. The alternation process that we refer to in the Treasury Board context, we are told that no, it does not apply to civilian members. Civilian members do have something similar. We've heard it being called substitution. Right now, what we're working with the RCMP, and they are trying to manage it on their end, is to allow for alternation or substitution, whatever you want to call it, within the RCMP. So if a civilian member wants to alternate with a public service employee within the RCMP, what they will do is change the category of employment within their control, so within their database. So if you're a civilian member and you're applying to alternate with a public service employee within the RCMP has the capacity to change that PSC position into a civilian member position so that you can just slide in. And that way you're not affecting your pension or any of the other benefits that are unique to civilian members. Where the problem arises is anywhere outside of the RCMP, they obviously don't have that discretion or authority to change the terms of the position. So it is not available yet. That was the last update and one of the workarounds that they were trying to put into place for civilian members. They're not there yet in terms of alternation. They are looking to establish it. So they are reviewing any kind of applications. They have said that if there was anything that was urgent, that would be one option they're considering, but we're not yet aware if they've actually done that. And it may be because they haven't received a request or because it's not ready yet. We don't know.
Thank you very much, Melanie. We don't have any more questions coming in, so I'm just giving a warning to our members online to type in your questions regarding to WFA and budget cuts. Now, we did have one question coming in for you, Darren. If you have a coworker in your workplace who receives a WFA notice, their job is affected, what guidance do you give them? What should they do?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think number one is it's meet them where they're at, talk to them where they're at, how they're check in with them, do that check in on how, because the mental health is going to be is the number one thing. It's a very stressful moment, sort of that acute moment, and you don't know where somebody is at with that process. Maybe that's something it's not going to be that big of an issue. They're considering retiring soon. Another, maybe this is somebody who's just started their career and this has come as a major shock. So meeting folks where they're at, having that heart to heart is a good place to start. The next step, I always say, is connect folks with the resources. Connect folks with resources. If they're not from the workforce adjustment, say, hey, well, we got these great guides. We got the flow chart that explains the pathway through. There's a really cool, there's an animated video on the PSAC WFA landing page, also linked on the USJE national website, where it maps out the process. The more people come to understand, the more they understand what supports are there for them, who is there to support them, and what they need to do. Next step, if you're somebody who wants to stay in the public service and you're looking that's your objective. It's updating that CV. It's reaching out within your network. It's talking to it's talking to managers about potential jobs. Maybe it's looking at other departments. It's going in, and maybe you're looking to find a job to get yourself out of this process right away. Other folks are going to want to take that step back and kind of breathe for a moment and kind of watch the process unfold, because the letters can take different shapes. The letters can say you're affected, and then that's it. And there's no other information. The letter could say you're affected and there's a voluntary departure program. Please let us know by this date. Okay, so there's a clock that you have to, a timeline. So understanding what's going on, and making a decision that is next. Some letters say you're affected and now you're an opting employee. So that starts a very discrete clock, a 120-day clock to make a decision about the entitlements in the appendix. So depends on what your letter says, depends on what your individual sort of paths is, but know that the resources are there for you. Your union is there for you, and reach out in your network, because there's going to be there's going to be those supports around you, and know that you're not alone going through that process. So again, and if the letter is confusing, or if this information is confusing, that's where you reach out to a USJE representative or a PSAC representative in your region, wherever you're at, your local steward or your local president, because they'll be happy to support you as you navigate. And getting involved in the various campaigns can also sort of build that sense of community around that moment as well. And there's lots of opportunities to do that. So
thank you, Darren.
And know that the checklist that Seb put up earlier, that was.
Yeah, no, thank you, Darren. And like you said on yesterday's town hall, really what is key here for our members is to educate themselves and to understand the process and what WFA entails, because in some instances, they may know more than their manager, and that can be a key advantage to them. If you want to just sit back, relax, and listen to WFA, we do have 2 podcasts bilingual with Darren and Aaron on that as well. So there's lots of resources available to our members, thanks to PSAC and USJE. We don't have any other let me double check very quickly here. Double check if we have any other questions. Oh, we do have a question. Do we have any information yet about anticipation for wave 3? Or is that for next fiscal year? And this one is specifically for the Department of Justice, but I don't know if we can answer more generally, like wave 1, 2, and 3. Where does that stand? I'm not sure if Melanie or David Melanie, you want it? Okay, it's yours.
So Department of Justice specifically, we did ask the question when they launched a wave 2. And so what we've been told is that they have no intentions of having a wave 3. Keep in mind, when we get this information from the department, they're very careful to put the caveat that if the government changes course, changes their targets, that's unknown to them at this time. So that's always an option. But as far as they're aware, there is no further wave 3. Those departments that are contemplating a wave 3, I have let you know. So far, the only one we've heard about is CSC. That was in their original rollout. When it was under the previous commissioner. With the review, we've taken the opportunity as well to try to advocate. USJE has at any chance we have to forego a wave 3 and try to do as much as possible in the wave 2, assuming we are going ahead with the wave 2. The reason being, the longer we go, the less we expect there's going to be alternation options, or it could affect alternation, right? If a lot of those positions are taken up earlier by other departments. So we want to maximize any kind of options available to our members. We're also in the middle of the early retirement incentive timeframe. So again, if someone is going to be affected, even if a decision is not made for a year down the road, we're advocating that it be done in a wave 2 and not a wave 3. So that's the only 2 departments really that have mentioned a wave 3. One to say that they don't expect it, and the other on the table, but we don't know what's coming after with the new commissioner's review.
Thank you very much, Melanie. There are no more questions. President Neufeld, you have the last word of the evening.
Merci encore pour votre participation active ce soir. Restez assurés que votre syndicat est là pour vous. I want to sincerely thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. Rest assured that your union is here for you. Stay informed and join your union in advocating on behalf of federal public safety personnel who keep Canadians safe. Have a good evening. Bonne soirée.